Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Quick shout out to my newest patron, John M. Thank you for choosing to support the channel. If you're wondering why I went MIA for a bit this week, my mom had a small procedure, so I wanted to be there for her, help her out with some things, so that's where I was. And as always, if I go MIA for a bit when there's actually news coming out, you can check the post tab to see why. And a quick shout out to my new friend, Sayon, who I got to meet IRL today. He was visiting from out of town, been following the channel since way back in the day. It really was so great to meet you. Thank you for all of the support, safe travels, and I'm looking forward to being in touch. Starship's 13th test flight did scrub yesterday. The new launch window is currently set to open this Monday, July 20th at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And the short of it, if you missed it, Elon said some of the engines did not start, triggering an automatic launch abort. To be confident of a good flight, 2 Raptors will be removed and replaced. As always with this test flight, SpaceX will be working on many things, but in my opinion, one of the main ones to watch is right here. For the first time, Starship will carry V3 Starlink satellites to space. And as part of the test, Starship is planned to deploy 20 satellites which will extend solar arrays and antennas and will attempt to connect with the larger Starlink constellation via the high-capacity lasers. These V3 Starlink sats will be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship and are expected to demise upon re-entry about 20 minutes after deployment. And 6 of these satellites have been modified with a suite of cameras to scan Starship's heat shield and transmit imagery down to the operators. So these are the actual V3 satellites, but they will not make it into orbit and they will burn up upon re-entry roughly 20 minutes after deployment. But as we've been told, SpaceX's goal is to operate V3 satellites later this year. And just to clarify, these V3 satellites will only fly on Starship. And speaking of Starlink, this week we also got the news about SpaceX's new V5 terminal, so I went ahead and put together a simple comparison comparing to the standard 4X, which in my opinion is the best apples to apples comparison. I won't go through every line, so pause and take a screenshot if you'd like, but I just wanted to highlight, I didn't see many people talking. The real play here is SpaceX making a margin push. This is not so much about increased performance, although certain line items are certainly improved. But overall, as you can see, the main improvements are in the weight, in the average power draw being less, and the size of the dish is also significantly smaller. And given that smaller surface area, that of course helps with the wind survivability. The 4X was rated up to 110 miles per hour, but the V5 goes up to 165. But V5 comes in at 2.4 pounds compared to 6.4 pounds for the 4X. There are some other upgrades, like V5 will come with an Ethernet cable when the 4X did not. And just FYI, the 2 rows at the bottom that look like a downgrade, that's only because so far SpaceX has chosen to change the router that comes with a terminal. I'd guess in the future there might be some optionality for getting to choose the router you want, but for now, V5 will come with the Router Mini instead of the Router 3. And the last thing I wanted to call out here, I see people asking about the speeds all the time. Right now they're saying V5 is capable of 375 plus. That would be compared to the 475 megabits per second that the 4X was capable of. That, of course, for download speeds, but just remember, this is so reliant on the network and where you have it set up, and the weather and the path to the sky and so on. So my expectation is V5 in practice will be delivering very similar speeds to the 4X, but far and away the main improvements are the footprint and the weight, which should lead to much better margins for SpaceX. And of course, just a better experience for the consumer. And yes, based on recent Elon interviews, we should be expecting a new V5 Starlink Mini, but there's nothing out there officially yet. And for those of you considering an upgrade, I did have this drawn to scale so you can get a sense of how much smaller the V5 footprint is relative to the 4X. And here it is. When you go to the official SpaceX site, you'll see Starlink V3 satellites. They lay out some detail right here. Each satellite is supposed to offer 1 terabit per second down and 160 gigabits per second up. And the former is an order of magnitude more capable than V2, and the latter is 2 orders of magnitude more capable than V2. And why does this matter? As Sean McGuire said, the Earth's international internet bandwidth is roughly roughly 1,835 terabits per second. So at 1 terabit per second for each V3 satellite and 60 satellites expected to launch with each Starship launch, he said Starship would roughly double the Earth's bandwidth every 30 launches. I do want to point out that last line isn't fully accurate because when it comes to actual bandwidth, there are many factors that go into the real world outcomes. However, I think directionally understanding the scale and magnitude of what V3 is unlocking is crucial. And direct from Starlink, the current network is around 450 terabits per second cumulative capacity launched to date. And given each V3 satellite is 1 terabit per second and they can put 60 of those on Starship, that means theoretically every launch could add 60 terabits per second, meaning it would take only 7.5 launches of Starship to double the Starlink network when it comes to the cumulative capacity. And given the first Starlink launches were in 2019, that's roughly 6.5 years that it took SpaceX to get that 450 terabits per second. And if we do get some of these V3 satellites beginning operations later this year, it might take in the neighborhood of a year to do those 7.5 launches to roughly double that capacity. So generally speaking, from roughly 7 years down to potentially 1 year for the same capacity. I just want to drive the point home, this really could be quite the accelerant. And you know what they say, the first 450 are the hardest, so SpaceX really is at the inflection point on the S-curve for Starlink. And as Elon recently said, they're planning to start flying the A1 orbital data center satellites sometime next year. And he also said that the A1 satellite V1 peak power spec has been raised to 250 kilowatts battery assisted with average power around 160 kilowatts. It will be able to handle an NVL72 Rubin rack. This is just version 1. And given that AI-1 won't start flying until next year, I would imagine there might be some other changes and tweaks before launch as well. And so each AI-1 satellite to start might be able to support in the neighborhood of 72 advanced GPUs. So again, I think it's useful to help everybody understand the scale of what's going on here. Each AI-1 satellite to begin, capacity-wise, will be starting at the scale of 1 high-end ground rack. And of course, there are nearly endless caveats and nuances here, but just to give you a general sense. And what do I mean when I say Elon's running this secret power play? Well, as the headline says, this week Elon quietly bought a Jacksonville energy company. He bought APR Energy with really no announcement. And Elon himself is the acquiring party. And the paperwork shows the transaction was granted early termination, meaning no further antitrust review is required before the deal could close. And the word is the overall deal is worth at least $1 billion. And what does APR do? Well, they specialize in rapidly deployable modular power generation. They have custom power plants engineered to handle high-density GPUs and AI workloads for hyperscalers and data center developers. The company has also powered more than 35 countries, delivered over 50 terawatt hours of energy, and can stand up projects in as little as 15 to 30 days, according to their website. So the core of this APR Energy is turbine-based energy generation. And these gas turbines are somewhat mobile and they do have global operations already. And we already know that Colossus 1 and 2 rely pretty heavily on gas turbine energy generation. So APR's mobile gas turbines paired with their expertise working with hyperscalers makes this seemingly a perfect acquisition for Elon. And I've said it dozens of times over the past few years, but the interconnection queue is a serious problem, and this is a way to sidestep those limitations. So while most people that play the game normally are sitting in these queues waiting for the power to come online, Elon says, no, here's $1 billion, I'm gonna do this myself. So this is really just Elon doing what he does best, finding the bottleneck and then smashing it. And I don't think I need to explain the downstream effects, but this will mean more compute coming online faster that they can either use to train in-house models like Grok, or they can take that new compute capacity coming online at Colossus 2 and rent it out to others. So for some reason, most people aren't really talking about this, but in my eyes, this is actually a pretty big deal and is yet another reminder that Elon is going to do whatever is required to catch up and ultimately win. Something I've been talking about for years is now so important the government is finally stepping in. California is about to become the only state doing something the other 49 states are not. And this perfectly illustrates why I'm such a vocal supporter of Delete Me, the sponsor of this video. California just launched this state-run tool called Drop. You fill out one form and then all registered data brokers need to remove your information. But unless you live in California, you're out of luck. And even in California, this only covers roughly 600 data brokers that voluntarily register, which just happens to leave hundreds more that don't. And this right here is exactly the gap that Delete Me fills. Delete Me removes your personal info from over 750 people search sites, more than the California drop list, and they do it in every state. Plus, they rescan every quarter because these sites constantly repopulate you. You can add your spouse, your parents, your kids 16 and up to your account at a discount per person, which does matter because data brokers link family profiles together. I just got my 16th report. Last quarter alone, Delete Me reviewed over 1,800 listings on my behalf, found my information on 6 people search sites, and submitted removals to all of them. Across the work they did for me this quarter, they saved me about 160 hours of work I would have to do on my own. And honestly, for me, the peace of mind is a big part of the product. So you can head to joindeleteme.com/electrified to get 20% off using my code electrified linked below, or by using the QR code on the screen. Shifting gears to Tesla, I'm very eager to see how its scaling of solar will change numbers like this. Right now, Australia leads the world in distributed energy adoption at 990 watts of solar per person, the highest rate anywhere. 40% of houses have rooftop solar, and nearly 5% of homes have batteries. And this is the product of 2 decades of deliberate policy. So all you politicians in America, please take note, this back and forth is hurting us all. For comparison, right now in the US, roughly 9% of US homes have rooftop solar and less than 1% have a battery. Hardware costs are of course a factor. Solar runs roughly $3 per watt here versus under $1 per watt in Australia, and batteries cost about $1,000 per kilowatt hour installed here versus $500 per kilowatt hour in Australia. Said another way, solar in America is roughly 3 times more expensive and the batteries are roughly twice as expensive. And it should be obvious, but it's the accommodative policies that ultimately lead to economies of scale and lower pricing. So on one hand, I'm quite encouraged by what we see in Australia because they are setting the standard, the blueprint is working. And now it's really just a matter of time until other countries get on board. On the robotaxi front, Tesla is now up to 175 vehicles in the Texas fleet officially registered. As always though, that does not tell us how many are currently in operation. But Tesla did register 73 new vehicles this week alone, the biggest to date by far. And yes, they are still all Model Ys. Nick Patane shared this graphic. Waymo did finally expand its geofence in Austin, which you can see in the blue, but Tesla's geofence in the red is still larger in terms of footprint. You know how there was some hype building that Germany might approve Tesla's supervised FSD ahead of that vote? Well, that's now seemingly out the window. And many of you will remember I said I would be surprised if that happens. But right here, the German State Secretary Christian Halter said the decision on type approvage will be made after a vote on the Europe-wide approval of the FSD supervised system within the framework of the TCMV. And again, the first time we could have that vote is October this year. He also said the KBA is expected to be provided with a Tesla vehicle this month for independent testing of the system in order to develop a well-founded German position on this. So the KBA will be doing some internal testing with a Tesla vehicle starting this month, but for now it sounds like they're not going to make a decision before the vote. This one was earlier in the week, but just so nobody missed it, Tesla has joined forces with 7-Eleven in Japan to begin installing superchargers. The 150th supercharger site in Japan was also the first of this new partnership. This makes 7-Eleven only the second convenience store chain in Japan to host Tesla superchargers, so hopefully the beginning of a new trend here. The first was Family Mart back in 2023, and this will not be a one-off deployment. 7-Eleven Japan says it intends to install superchargers at about 10 additional stores before the end of its 2026 fiscal year. And keep in mind, through the first 6 months of the year, Tesla registered about 12,200 vehicles in Japan, up about 166% year over year. And that means Tesla passed its total sales in Japan for 2025 in the first half of 2026. So yet another acceleration for Tesla, this one in Japan. In a surprise to no one here, the NTSB came out with its report of that Tesla that crashed into a home. And what do you know? The driver manually overrode FSD by pressing the accelerator pedal to 100%. And the vehicle speed was greater than 70 miles per hour when the crash occurred. So honestly, a horrific and very sad story here, but of course, this was not FSD behavior. Tesla has deployed yet another mega charger, this one in Bloomington, California, with 6 stalls. As Max from Tesla said, the build-out is focused on the most important semi-routes and depots first. And I think Sawyer said this was the first public site, but I don't believe that's true because Tesla Semi did post in May of this year the first mega charger station was in Los Angeles, specifically in Ontario, California, and they did say that one was open to semi customers, which would imply that one was also open to the public. And before that, of course, Tesla had a few private ones as well. And you can go to the Tesla Find Us map and you'll see these very small gray circles when you select for only mega chargers and coming soon. There's a few in Florida, some in Georgia, a bunch in Texas, a bunch in California, and of course some others scattered about. And when you zoom in, you can get a much better idea and click each site to see it's coming soon. And looking at Texas, there's roughly 24 set to come online soon. Tesla is set to enter yet another new market. This time around, it's Latvia. Not a huge market. The passenger car market there is in the neighborhood of 25,000 a year, and BEV adoption for 2025 was in the neighborhood of 7%. So that's under 2,000 BEVs that were sold for all of 2025. S.E. Robinson attended Tesla's Lithium Day 2026, and he said the facility is now complete and fully ramped. Materials are being shipped to Giga Texas for 4680 production. This really is an awesome milestone. It won't show up in the financials overnight, but in the years to come, this will certainly serve as a background margin tailwind. Not to mention the supply chain security that comes with it. And Tesla's opening up pre-orders on July 31st for a balanced bike for kids, set at $225. Tesla stock closed the day at $380.84, down 2.61%. And SpaceX closed at $123.99, down 5.43%, officially below the $135 IPO price, which frankly I don't think should come as a surprise. I've been saying all along, I'm kind of hoping it goes down to around $100 per share, and I do think it'll dip down below that mark at some point in the months ahead before beginning its ascent up. As always, not financial advice, that's just my guess. And the NDX today was down 1.49%. Don't forget, check out Delete Me linked below for those of you that haven't already. I'm urging you to take even 5 minutes this weekend and do a search about all of these new AI scams that are taking place. Delete Me is so affordable and it will give you peace of mind knowing you're doing what you can to fight back. Hope you all have a safe and wonderful weekend, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.